Hello, family and friends. And I'm making this recording because someone asked me, how did you and Connie get together? And I'm going to tell you firsthand, it was God who brought us together. So I'm going to share some of my background going back years. There's going to be a little humor in it. Um, of course, all of us could use a good laugh sometimes, and I'm just going to share from my heart. Okay, on August 2nd, 1965, I met my first wife, Rosemary. On July 20th, 1968, we got married. Both Rosemary and I, Rosemary and I, were believers in Jesus Christ. And we stayed together for 36 years until the Lord called Rosemary home on October 8th, 2004. And those were 36 great years. In those years, we had to relocate. As many of you know, I worked for IBM and I got transferred from New Jersey to Bethesda, Maryland, uh, in 19 at the end of 1983, and I lived in Maryland for a little over 20 years. And my career in software engineering started in 1968. I worked for Lockheed Martin for 25 years. And then the last 10 years of my career, I worked for Lockheed Martin. And I worked on government contracts. Just to give you a little bit about my professional background, I had, when I was with Lockheed Martin, I worked on government contracts, and I had a top secret clearance, and I did work for the FBI, the CIA, and the NSA. And when the Lord took Rosemary, I retired. I had many things going on in my life, but it was God's timing for me to retire. I was 58 years old when I retired. Did I plan my retirement? No. But God has His ways. A year before I retired, I bought my place that I now live in Magnolia Greens. And the last year especially was a very trying year. Rosemary had breast cancer, and I spent I was working full time, and I spent the year. I had to take a lot of personal time off, going back for chemotherapy, radiation treatments, going back and forth to the hospital. I knew what was happening, and I did a lot of grieving before the before the Lord took her. Like I said, I was a 21-year-old kid when I got married, and my whole adult life at till that point was with Rosemary, and they were 36 great years. We had trials and tribulations just like everybody else. But the big thing we had in common was our relationship in Jesus Christ. And we loved each other very much. So, when the Lord took her, I was totally worn out. And I had this place where I now live in Magnolia Greens. I bought that as a second home, and I was thinking, well, when I retire, I'll move down there. But the Lord had different timing. So a lot of people, I had a lot of other things going on in my life at the same time. Some are too personal to reveal. But I had everything thrown at me but the kitchen sink. So I retired from my career on October 31st, 2004. Lord took Rosemary on October 4th, 2008. 2004. And I moved down to my home right here on November 15th, 2004. And being retired, all of a sudden, I felt empty. I didn't have Rosemary to share my retirement years with, and I also felt guilty about being retired. I can't explain why I felt that way, but I felt I should be productive. But I was not in an emotional state to be as productive as I wanted to be, because I had a lot of things going on in my life. So I moved down to Maryland. Now, at the same time, God works. My sister retired at the same time, and I encouraged her because I says, look, her son, my nephew, lived in Conway, South Carolina, and where I was moving to was about an hour and a half away from where he lived. And my sister had been wanting to move closer to her son, so I said, well, look, I got plenty of room. I have 2 extra bedrooms, and if you just pray about retiring. And she did, and the Lord worked it out where she could move down. The very first day she moved down, because she was able to move before I did. Her first day down here, it was October 8th, the same day the Lord took Rosemary. And she had to come back to Maryland for the services. When I moved down here, I had my sister, which was big for me because I needed some support. At about the same time, my mother came down to spend some time with me, and so did my niece. Kathleen, and she had an 8-year-old, I think she was 7 or 8-year-old, named Diana. And if you know me, I love kids. Well, I enjoyed having Diana down here. And I took her to the community pool, which was practically in my backyard. We went swimming, and I was teaching her a little bit on the piano, because I had my piano down here. And God used all of these things for comfort. But I still felt very much alone because, like I said, I was married my whole adult life. And I was used to having Rosemary by my side. So I said, well, I hadn't dated anybody for almost 40 years because I went with Rosemary for 3 years before we got married. So I had no idea how to meet a girl or date a girl. Had no idea. So I came up with this brainstorm. I found that there were Christian dating websites. I said, well, maybe I could find someone on one of these Christian websites because, I'm a believer. I've been married to Rosemary, who is a strong believer. I said, well, it makes sense to try a Christian dating website. So I said, okay. So I decided I was going to send my information um, to this Christian dating website. So, they ask you questions, your background, what are your interests, and so on and so forth. So I get to the point where I'm ready to post my picture. And I says to myself, I tried to look at myself objectively, and if you look at me, I have a lot of Italian features. And back on my old job, people in my department nicknamed me the Hitman because I looked like an Italian hitman. And a lot of people said I looked like Tony Soprano. I says, wait a minute. I don't want to scare the girls away with my picture. So I came up with something that I posted my picture, and I put, I look like an Italian hitman, but my temperament is just the opposite. I am gentle, but strong. Well, I got a lot of responses from that. And I met someone down in Georgia, and I was sharing it with the men's group in my church back in Maryland. So they started praying for me that I wouldn't make any rash decisions by moving too quickly, finding somebody on the internet. Now, I drove down to Georgia, met a very nice girl. She was very pretty. And, I was so anxious. I almost rushed things too much. But the Lord told me, wait a minute, you rushed. And she was very nice, very attractive. But it was just the wrong fit. And I knew it. Meanwhile, I met a bunch of nice people, Christians, at the local coffee shop. The name of the coffee shop was Galen. And I would hit it off with this couple, Dave and Geneva. They've been married for years, and Dave would always ask me some questions about the Bible, and I would share with him. And Geneva, she was just a nice, sweet lady, and Geneva was very pretty herself, and Dave, with both of them, I just felt relaxed and at home. And one day, my now wife Connie walked into the coffee shop, and right away Connie caught my eye, and I didn't know who she was, and her and Geneva went out shopping. So the next day, I asked Dave, Dave, who was that nice looking lady that Geneva went out with yesterday? And he told me, well, that's Geneva's younger sister, Connie. Connie was the youngest one. She was the youngest of 9 children, and Geneva was the oldest. And when I found out that she was Connie's sister, well, in my mind, that scored a lot of points because Geneva was very sweet, very kind, and Dave, my brother-in-law, I just felt good around them, and let me reverse back. A bunch of the people at that coffee shop kind of took me under their wing, and I got this new grand piano that I now have, and I needed some help moving it from one end of the room to the other. So a bunch of the people from the coffee shop came over to help me move the piano. So they said, well, we'll move the piano under one condition: you play something for us. So I did. I played some traditional hymns. They knew I was a believer. And I played a little bit of Southern gospel, and they really enjoyed it. And Dave and Geneva got to be really close friends of mine. So, reversing back, my brother-in-law Dave gave me Connie's phone number without Connie's permission. And I called Connie up, but she wasn't home. I didn't know her schedule. She worked second shift, like the 4 to 12 or 3 o'clock to 11 o'clock. She worked the second shift. I didn't realize that, but so I left her a couple of messages. And she was over the house with her sister Geneva. Connie says, who's this strange guy that keeps calling? And Geneva says, oh, that must be Bob. Me and Dave are friends with Bob. He's a good, he's really a nice guy. That's good. So anyway, I got to meet Connie, and tell a little bit about myself. We come from completely different backgrounds. I'm the Yankee, and she's a born Southerner. I'm the first Yankee in her family. So, on our first date, I got her some flowers. I was dressed in a suit with a tie, and we were going out for breakfast because she gets home about midnight and she gets up. So I show up at her door, and I show up in a suit, and I got flowers, trying to be. And then she says to me, "Robert, are we going to a wedding or a funeral?" I didn't own a pair of jeans. And I when I worked for IBM, I wore a three-piece suit every day. I didn't own a pair of jeans. Well, that all changed. She said, so we went to Galen's together. Well, we had breakfast together, and Galen, the owner, had a separate table for us, and they put candle lights on the table, and my friends are looking on and just teasing us. But I want to tell you something. In a way, I am glad I dated that other lady. She was nice and everything else, and she was good looking. But I saw the difference when I met Connie. I didn't have to put on any airs. Right away, I felt totally relaxed and at ease because Dave described Connie as a simple country gal. Well, I'm going to tell you something about Connie. She is very smart and very sharp about a lot of things. But just her being her, she did not demand anything. In fact, if I were to describe Connie, she was the most unselfish person I've ever met. And she had integrity. I mean, she was loyal and trustworthy, and I saw that right away. I started thinking to myself, the more I spent time with her, the more in love I fell for her because she had everything. And the night, the night, the Saturday night before we went to church together for the first time, I bought her a brand new Charles Ryrie reference Bible. And she loved it. And I shared the gospel with her that night, and she became a believer in Jesus Christ. The next morning we went to church together, and she absolutely loved it. I mean, only God can do that kind of arranging. And she took to the people and to everything like a fish to water. I mean, she grew spiritually almost overnight. And she had everything. She has her own sense of humor. I'll tell you. Uh, so so anyway, I'll tell you a humorous story. I laugh about it all the time when I think about it. I was invited to a wedding back in Maryland, where I lived. A couple from my church had a son who was getting married, and I knew Josh. When he was younger, I taught him in Sunday school and was a kids leader when he was about 7 or 8. So they invited me to the wedding, and I said to Connie, "Would you like to take a trip to Maryland with me?" Now, Connie grew up in a little town called Kelly, and if you ever been to Kelly, I'll describe the town. They had on their website picture Kelly at rush hour. You don't see a car anywhere. They had their big homecoming parade, which consists of one fire truck and one squad car. And that was their big homecoming parade. Real small town. I'm I'm driving up to Maryland. We get on 495. If you ever been on the Beltway, you know it's 6 lanes each way, and you're going slow if you're doing 70. And cars surrounding you, and you need to know which lane to get in. Well, Connie never saw anything like this. And she was so we stayed at a friend's house, a Christian couple who I knew, so we stayed at their house. And Saturday we went to the wedding and went to the wedding reception. And that was nice. So we get up Sunday morning, and I said to Connie, would you mind if we went to my home church before we headed back home? She said, okay. Now, give you a little backdrop, which I didn't realize. the whole men's group was praying for me that I wouldn't make a mistake by dating somebody on the internet right away and getting to know them. I'll just leave it at that. So anyway, we walk into the church, and we sat next to the back pew. We sat there, and Connie could feel every eye of the women at the church staring at her. She caught on, I didn't. And and then the sermon ends, and Connie gets up and tells the two women in back of her, I crack up. She said to them, "He didn't get me off the internet." I, I cracked up, man. He didn't get me off the internet. But that's gone. She she has a sense of humor. Uh, I should have her tell that story, how she felt and how she put it. But it's, everybody, those two women looked at her dumbfounded. He didn't get me off the internet. So anyway, that's that's how we met. We dated each other for a year, and we got married on a Tuesday, Valentine's Day. Had to be on the day. I said, "Well, why don't we get married the weekend before or after?" No, we got married on Valentine's Day because she says, "I don't want you to forget our wedding anniversary." We got married February 14th, 2006. And we're this February will be in 2022 will be 16 years, and they've been great years. And I'll just put it this way: the Lord blessed me twice. And I'm going to say to those seeking the right mate, pray about, ask God to put the right person in your life. For me, it worked fine, and it does. It does every time, from my experience, because I'll share another verse that says, "Trust in the Lord with all your heart, and lean not into your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your paths." Now, how did I meet Connie? By divine providence. What do I mean by that? God puts certain people in your life. You have no idea. Sometimes He could work through the internet, but not with me. He didn't work that way with me. But He surrounded me with the right people. And he, when God does the choosing, I'll tell you, I tease Connie. My family took to her right away. In fact, I tease Connie, you know what? I think my family loves you more than they do me. But when God does the choosing, it works. And you just go about doing what is right. What do I mean by that? Don't intentionally go out seeking a mate. First, make sure you have a right relationship with God through the person of Jesus Christ. And He will direct your paths. Don't lean into your own understanding because our understanding is finite. If you trust with someone who is omniscient, in other words, he knows everything, he knows you like a book better than you know yourself. He knows who the right person is for you and who isn't. Trust him. And he will direct your paths. Was it just by chance that I happened to meet my good friends Dave and Geneva? No. God brought all these things together, and He has His own ways of doing it. Here I'm going all the way down to Georgia, and Connie lived about 2 miles from where I live now. So, I'm saying all of this. Don't just hang on and wait for the right person. If you want the person of God's choice, well, you yourself have to have a right relationship with God through the person of Jesus Christ. And I'm sharing this with you because many of you I know are looking for direction. And I just wanted to share my simple testimony with you. And whatever you're seeking, I pray that first of all, you will find Jesus Christ first. Let Him enter your life, and then He will direct your paths. May God bless you. Take care.